Leonard Beerman was one of the first people to welcome me to Los Angeles in July, August, September of 1974. I was appointed by the Bishop of Los Angeles of the United Methodist Church to the Holman congregation. We moved here from Memphis, Tennessee. I had spent 17 years in the southeastern part of the country in the emerging nonviolent movement, or the movement that I often call the Rosa Parks Martin Luther King movement, where there was about 20 years of many, many different kinds of nonviolent demonstrations. Some of these hitting international news, like the Montgomery bus boycott, 55 to 57. So Leonard was in what was called at that time the Los Angeles Civil Rights Movement, a conglomerate of all kinds of people. I went to some of the first meetings that people asked me to go to. So as a rabbi, being a Protestant pastor, we hit it off as brothers almost instantly. This was intuitive, but it was also the fact that as a rabbi and as a Protestant pastor, we recognized our common roots and we recognized our path of intellectual life that made us brothers in the great prophetic tradition of the Hebrew Christian Bible. So from then on, we were associated in a great variety of ways in those meetings and that coming together. And then in addition to that, I found Leonard as one who had a deep appreciation of Jesus as a rabbi, as a Jewish teacher, which at different times in Christianity, Christians have tried to blot that out with the acculturation of Christianity, even in the United States, where the issue of anti-Semitism emanating out of Christian churches has been a serious problem. But Leonard and I, again and again, found ourselves of common accord. When, for example, there was difficulty in Israel and Palestine, Leonard and I found ourselves on the same side of the fence. We came to those meetings with a common vision. He was a member of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, I discovered. Fellowship of Reconciliation is a national body, international even now, where adherents of various religions come together and work to solve problems of conflict and injustice from a soul force position. We have a very strong criticism of every form of violence, whether violence of the spirit or violence of the language or wars and various forms of law enforcement brutality. We are very much opposed to that, all of that. And Leonard was a part of that network to which I also belonged before I came to LA. As I engaged in working families to organize them into unions in LA, Leonard became a part of that ecumenical group, and we together were able to organize the Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, a nonprofit that is still going on. Well, Rabbi Beerman was in the earliest meetings. When the 9/11 came, we were on the phone that same day. Within a week, an ecumenical group of us, including Leonard, were shaping what in Los Angeles called the Interfaith Community for Justice and Peace. That still also goes on. So in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, and into this century, Rabbi Beerman and I were collaborators, or brothers, in organizing a prophetic religious perspective and vision. I am delighted to be a part of the Leonard Beerman Foundation because I feel still, as I remember both Leonard's spirit and bodily presence, that he was just simply one of the extraordinary human beings in my mind in our country and in this century.
And we're called, all of us, to a different vision of the world, a vision in which the essential dignity and humaneness of every human being, whoever they may be, every human being is honored. We, in the field of religion, call that being made in the image of God, the divine essence of every human being.
For the first time in the United States, we have a growing group of people who want nothing to do with organized religion. And that's too bad, because I think religion, from the very beginning of the human race, was the way in which ordinary people and families and communities united in a positive journey of life in which compassion and freedom and justice were pretty much united with a kind of common bond. Leonard represented that school of thought out of the Hebrew Bible, and that's the school of thought to which I have found myself bound in faith and practice from a very early time in my life, that is, from as early as high school in my life. I knew that contemporary Christianity in many ways disobeyed Isaiah and Jesus. So that is a particular dimension of religious thought deeply rooted in the Torah, in the prophets like Isaiah and Micah, and also, from my point of view, in the teachings of Jesus. And it is a religion and a form of religion which all people need to come to, whether they call it a religion or not, or whether they call it Hinduism or something else. The ancient literature and poetry and the ancient scriptures from the human race are an essential part of the journey of the human race intellectually and heart-wise or in understanding, and is critical for having a human race that will continue on in self-discovery and in creating small places and large places that will perpetuate the finest meaning of what it is to be a human being. And Leonard is a part of that vision in my mind. His life, his work, the way he was constantly on the frontier, his courage in the face of criticism for the stands he took often, especially in relationship to Israel and Palestine. The way he did this with such a magnanimous spirit, a spirit of truth and beauty.